Friends, my name is Spherno, and it's time for my weekly power rankings, sponsored by me. Last week was a very interesting week of matches. We had some interesting upsets, Seoul versus Shanghai. We had some expected games like Houston and Atlanta, the 3-0s that we saw coming, but we also saw the return of the London Spitfire, meaning that officially all of our teams have played in this online setting against somebody, and that makes it a lot easier now to start placing these teams where I think they go, especially for this week. So I've made a tier break between the top 10 and the bottom 10. That doesn't mean that I'm ranking them any differently. If they're up here, they're definitely better than anybody who's down here. I just wanted to make it easier for myself and you guys to know when I've reached the halfway point. So let's go. Starting with our bottom team is going to be the Vancouver Titans. Look, I know it's not easy for you guys. You just started your brand new team. Your players have never played before together until this weekend, so it was kind of tough. But until you guys can start getting these wins, you guys lost to the Justice and you lost to the Florida Mayhem. Now, you lost to one good team, or what I would consider a good team, and one bad team, quite possibly the worst team in the league. But, you know, until they can start showing us some wins, I'm more confident placing them in the bottom position, which is good news if you're a Boston fan, because that means you're no longer in the bottom. And right above the Vancouver Titans, perfectly placed, are the Washington Justice. I thought, maybe they might start moving up a little bit once the Vancouver Titans new roster started playing, but then they lost Corey and Stratus in the span of exactly 2 days. It wasn't even. Nobody kind of expected it, so we didn't know what to know going into this match between the Justice and the Titans. But now that Stratus is gone, he played his last game and left. And now that Corey is gone, having retired earlier on in the week, all we're really left with is Tuba, Elivote, Roar, Aim God, Arc. Meaning the Justice have to sign a new DPS, meaning that if they have a game next week, it's not going to be very good because their new DPS isn't going to have the chance that they need to start working with them the way that they need to, and that's really just going to bring a damper to the team's already horrific season. Right above the Washington Justice are going to be the Boston Uprising. Congratulations, guys! You're no longer the number 20 team. Granted, it's not by much. Your opponents seem to be the Washington Justice and the Vancouver Titans, but in their current state, I think if the Uprising went against either of these two teams, they'd beat them no problem. But, of course, if they went against any team above them, well, we already know how that goes. Right above the Boston Uprising is a team that unfortunately has fallen quite a bit since the beginning of this season, the Houston Outlaws. They were on the rise for a little bit. You got to week 6 and they beat the Defiant, which we didn't expect, and then they're just starting to play badly again. They lost to Atlanta Reign. They've lost to several other teams that I don't even want to have to take the time to name right now because Outlaws just aren't a good team. They have good players. They have Dante. They have Blase. They have, Jexe and Repel on support line. Unfortunately, it's their tank line that's holding them back right now, and that puts them here because they're just not winning any games. Right above the Houston Outlaws is another team that, shocker, shocker, nobody really expected to be down here, the Chengdu Hunters. Their season is starting to become more and more abysmal the more we watch them go through it. They're losing games consistently. Their map differential is absolute trash, and it's like they don't have a hold on any of the metas. Hero Pools is really messing with them because unless there are very specific heroes in play for a certain week, they don't have a hold on the meta because they want to play this off meta, they want to play this crazy stuff that they just can't afford to play right now, and until they start learning how to play around the meta and the ever-changing meta, they're going to stay down there at the bottom. Right above the Hunters is another Chinese team that I'm a little surprised has made it this low, the Hangzhou Spark. They had a really good season, or end of season last year. Stage 4 for the 2019 season was pretty good for them, but they haven't gone past that. Instead, they've kind of backtracked a little bit in their progress. You know, they're losing to Shanghai, which, granted, it's the Shanghai Dragons, but if you're losing to Shanghai and you're losing to Seoul and you're losing to Guangzhou and you're losing to New York, then eventually you're going to be at the bottom of the Asian region. And unfortunately, I think all the teams that I'm about to place above the Spark are just that much better than them. I think any other team in the league that's above them could beat them without really breaking a sweat. And right above the Hangzhou Spark, the perfectly placed Toronto Defiant. You guys are doing good all of a sudden. You finally made it into the mid-tier teams, and it's got to be from that game against the Shock. You guys won control. You guys kind of faltered a little bit on map 2, but and map 3 wasn't much better. But when you guys got to King's Row, oh my gosh, I was on my feet with how well you guys were holding them off. You got the Shock down from one of the fastest completion times in the first round to almost beating them in the second round. Of course, some well-timed coordination between Smurf and Moth got you guys down in that final fight and let them win, but if it wasn't for that, I think you guys would be a lot higher in this list than you are right now. So keep it up, and you should see you guys start to climb pretty convincingly. So right below, or right above the Toronto Defiant, above in numbers, it's below because it's 12 and 13, or 14 and 13, whatever. Anyway, is going to be the Seoul Dynasty. They had a win against the Dragons, which is why they're no longer like all the way down here in my power rankings. But at the same time, they're just, I'm still not confident in them yet, okay? It kind of looked to me, the way that I was watching the Asian games this weekend, that the Dragons did not have a hold on the meta that they thought they did. The meta this week was really awkward, kind of a weird one for them, but they just didn't seem super confident, and the same thing could be said for the New York Excelsior. Both of those teams just didn't look super good with the meta. But in that case, Seoul, they just kind of had a lucky week in my opinion. I don't think they're back for good. I don't think they're on the rise again. I just think they got really lucky 1 week out of, 20. So, unfortunately, Seoul Dynasty, you're going to stay in the exact same spot that you did last week. But right above the Seoul Dynasty is a brand new team in the league, or not brand new team in the league, but brand new team for this season, the London Spitfire. Holy heckin' heck, guys. You came out, you beat the Hunters. Sure, you turned around and lost to Guangzhou, but you're going to see where I place Guangzhou eventually, so, I'm fine with you guys losing that match. But you guys look confident. You look like you have a hold on this hero pool, and since the hero pools are different than they were when we last saw you from, week 5 or 6, I just think that you guys are on the rise. I think you guys can play multiple metas, and you have the deep enough roster. You don't maybe have a full 12-man roster, which is fine, but you do have the talent to pick from. You do have the deep enough roster that you have the flexibility. So I think we're going to continue to see these guys keep dominating, or not dominating, but keep rising up in this Asian region that they find themselves in. Finishing off our top 10, or our bottom 10, not our top 10, is going to be the Los Angeles Valiant. Honestly, these guys are playing really good. They could technically see themselves in the top 10 eventually, but because we had some teams show up and show out during the weekend, they just kind of outshined the Valiant, and I'll put them in this number 11 spot just because where else am I going to put them? They're better, I think, than most of these other teams below them, but some of these other teams, they just kind of got outshined a little bit, which isn't necessarily their fault at all. So, good on you guys. I'm going to keep you here just because I don't really have anywhere else to put you, but we're going to go on to our top 10, starting with the Los Angeles Gladiators. These guys are on a bit of a tear, but they did lose to Paris, and Paris is back in the top 10 again, so I'm pretty happy with their performance, and they're only top 10 material, kind of below these other teams, because I feel like they could beat the Valiant, but a lot of these other teams they would struggle against. That's just my personal opinion. You guys feel free to dispute me on the Gladiators position, whether you think they need to go lower or higher. This is kind of a weird one for me, but right above the Gladiators in the number 9 position is going to be the Dallas Fuel, and I can already hear the hate comments that the Dallas Fuel are not better than the Gladiators, but look at what they're doing. They're challenging the Philadelphia Fusion, taking them, maybe to a map 4, but even in that final map, they looked like they were ready to take Fusion to a 5th map. So keep practicing, keep improving yourself, and keep getting that team synergy down, and stop relying so heavily on your carry potential from your DPS. And I think you guys have a true shot at making it maybe even higher than where you are right now, and starting to beat out like the Eternal, the Mayhem, the Charge, some of the teams like that. I think they definitely have a chance of doing that once we start seeing more cross-regional play. Right above the Dallas Fuel is a team that has risen very highly. I had them in the 15th position last week, and now they're up here in the number 8 position, the Paris Eternal. I wasn't sure last week. I know they took Philly to a map 5, and I know that they've had some struggles against teams like the Florida Mayhem after losing a bunch of their players all at once, but they look like they finally found themselves. They're coming back. They've got Fielder now in the roster, and he is just destroying on the support, playing on 200 ping and still kicking everybody's butts. I have a lot of confidence in this Paris Eternal roster now that they have Fielder, and I think that, we could see them come back to where they were before. Kind of unlikely in my opinion, just because of, look at the list of teams that I still have yet to place. Who do they really have a chance of beating except maybe the Florida Mayhem? Which, speaking of the Florida Mayhem, a perfect segue into my number 6 position, the Florida Mayhem. These guys are on a tear right now through their region, and even some of the other regions. They just don't want to stop. And now, from Miyake's own words, and I kind of agree, the 3 games that they've won have been Boston Uprising and Vancouver Titans, but they did also have that win against the Paris Eternal, and seeing that the Paris Eternal are looking to be a pretty good team, Florida may just be better than that, and I have no doubt that they actually are, because personally, I enjoy watching the Florida Mayhem, and they're a great group of guys, so watching them finally be on a winning streak and not down here in like the 20th position where they were last year is a good thing to see, kind of a refreshing sight. Right above Florida is a team that has fallen just a little bit, but ever so slightly, the Atlanta Reign. I think they're actually in the same position I put them in last week, and that's going to be the number 6 position. Yeah, Florida Mayhem's number 7, Atlanta Reign's number 6. I think I may have said Florida 7. Don't quote me, but that's okay. Atlanta Reign, you guys have faltered a little bit against the Valiant, against some of these higher level teams, but for the most part, you're still playing pretty good. I have full confidence that you guys are still top 6 potential, even top 5 potential. I think they really have the potential to be up in that top 6. They've just got to get a win against some of these bigger and better teams, like the number 5 team, the New York Excelsior. Oh, how the mighty have fallen, but ever so slightly. The only reason that I'm dropping them a couple spots is because all of a sudden, and the same thing goes for Shanghai when you see where I've placed them, is that sure, they're tearing through their respective regions. Both of them are completely dominating over in the Asian region, but when you consider that they can possibly have weeks like the one that we just witnessed where they both lost to their opponents, it just shows that their flexibility isn't all there, because they just didn't look confident in this week's meta. And if they didn't look confident in this week's meta, they could not look comfortable in other weeks' metas. That's always a possibility. So until they can show that they are comfortable in most, if not all, metas that are presented to them, they're going to be just making this number 5 position. Right above them is a team that really shocked me, the Guangzhou Charge. Ever since Echo was released, I know we said what we said. We placed them in like number 8, number 7 back before Echo's release, but that was because they were bringing out a lot of crazy stuff. They were playing Pharah in a really weird way. They were playing a ton of wacky compositions, but now we realize, for example, one of the biggest questions that I had about watching them was, what are they doing with their Pharah? They were positioning her weird, they were playing her weird, they weren't pocketing her like we thought they would. And I think in the end, it was just them preparing for Echo, two heroes with very similar skill kits being played in preparation for. They were kind of ahead of the game in that regard, and now that Echo has been a consistent part of the meta and will continue to be a consistent part of the meta for the next week, for the foreseeable future, I expect that we keep seeing the Guangzhou Charge playing her at a really high level, and since they got the win over the New York Excelsior, I'm going to place them above the New York Excelsior. So they've gone up a few positions, they deserve it, good job Charge. Right above the Charge is these are kind of like the obvious three, and they're actually going in this order. Sorry, Shanghai, I'll explain you in a second. But San Francisco Shock still have a deep roster. I was just about to talk about Rascal and got sidetracked, but they have a really deep roster. They have all the players and hero pool combinations that you could possibly want out of them. What more could you ask for? They're beating all of these teams very consistently. The only teams that they have yet to go against are like Philadelphia and Shanghai, which are your top two teams. And if the Shock can beat either of these two teams, then we could see them in contention for first place. But right above them is going to be the Shanghai Dragons. And for the same reason that I brought down the Excelsior just a little bit, you guys lost to Seoul. And sure, this could just be an off week for you guys, but that's just it. In this new meta with these new hero pools and the compositions and the metas that you need to run shifting every single week, you can't afford to have an off week. You just can't. And when the Dragons and the Excelsior are showing that even in their region, which is extremely small, they've only got like 6 or 7 teams to play against, if you're not able to stay consistent over a wide variety of metas over a wide period of time, then you're just not the number one team anymore. Conversely, the Philadelphia Fusion are still on a tear. All of their players are showing great consistency on the hero pools that they are given, and we have yet to see a couple of their players, namely Chipsa. And I'll keep bringing him up until I'm blue in the face. We have not seen Chipsa yet, but we might see him very soon. And since we are seeing such diversity among heroes in this team, and we haven't even seen one of their players play yet, just imagine how much deeper their roster goes than just what we're seeing right now. So that's why the Fusion are sitting at the number one spot. They beat the Fuel, they beat Paris, they're continuing to beat every team that they go up against. So where else can you really put them? They haven't had an off week like the Dragons have. So I think in terms of consistency, which is a factor in my power rankings, the Fusion have to go above the Dragons. But that is going to be my power rankings for week 14. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I really want to hear. I've heard some interesting things about, I've heard stuff about Florida. I've heard people talk about Paris being down low in my power rankings, and I want to keep hearing it. I will respond to you guys in the comments, have a friendly discussion, but until that time, my name is Spherno, representing the Fruit Bowl Cast. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, hit the subscribe button, like the video, comment. That way we can keep putting ourselves out to new faces. You guys help us get our names out there every time that you do something like that. And we appreciate it. If you guys enjoy the content and we keep putting it out, you guys will appreciate it. And it just makes everybody happy. So go ahead and do that. And until the next video, I will see you later. Goodbye.